Greetings. Leadership consultants at the National Fraternity are an extremely important and strategic part of the National Fraternity's ability to consult with and advise chapters. Conversely, the skills that leadership consultants strengthen and learn while they're on the road and on the job benefit them for the rest of their lives, both professionally and personally. I'm Win Smiley, and this is the ATO Show.
My name is Sam Satterfield from the University of North Alabama. I was on staff from 2016 until 2018. When I was on staff, I was a leadership consultant, and I traveled between North Dakota and New Mexico, and then I also traveled a little bit to Illinois and Michigan.
As a consultant, you learned skills, stretched in some skills, learned new ones. So sort of thinking back to when you were a consultant, what were some of those things that you either built, strengthened, or learned as a consultant?
Yeah, I think two big ones are leadership, and you learn a lot about leadership through your undergrad experience, and that's great, but I feel like being a consultant builds on that in a new way. When you're leading your undergrad chapter, these are your friends, and they want you to succeed, and that's a great safety net to learn leadership. And then when you're a consultant, you build on that on a whole new level. So you're walking into new rooms, and I feel like what's unique about that compared to other jobs right out of college is when you leave college and you step into most jobs, you're the bottom rung. They're teaching you, they're still training you, and maybe you'll get there eventually. When you start as a consultant, you're the subject expert. You go through training over the summer, and when you walk into a chapter, you're in charge of what you have to explain to them, how you need to lead them, how you need to build on their chapter leadership. So it's a whole new level of leadership that I learned on the road. And I would also say that's kind of the professional side. And the personal side is self-reliance. You're in a whole new part of the country. You're able to explore, but you might not know anyone for thousands of miles. And that's a great experience to learn to rely on yourself, to learn about yourself personally, and see a new part of the country as well. I think that's great.
Yeah. So you have a lot of time for a little self-assessment, self-reflection, getting feedback from people that you didn't really know at all, positive, negative, even if it's a vibe in a room kind of deal.
Absolutely, and I think that's so different because you joined your chapter for a reason. These are guys that you like to be around. You walk into a chapter that's totally different from yours, and you're still expected to lead in that room, and that's how it is in the professional world. You're going to walk into rooms where you're expected to lead. You're going to walk into rooms where you're expected to take charge or present or something. You're not going to know anyone there. They might not care whether or not you succeed, and having the background of being a consultant is huge for the professional development afterwards.
Okay, so fast forward, you wrap up your consulting tour, go into the professional world. What skills, in terms of what you learned as a consultant, did you take with you that you found valuable moving into the professional world that may have given you a leg up compared to your peers at that time? Absolutely.
So when I left college, I didn't know what I wanted to do professionally, and so ATO was a great self-reflection we talked about. I had 2 years to think and reflect on what I wanted to do professionally, and I landed on politics. I wanted to work on Capitol Hill. Coming out of undergrad, I never would have pursued that. After 2 years of working at ATO, that self-reliance that we talked about, I felt confident to move to DC. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything lined up. I didn't know anybody, but I knew that I could handle it. I knew that I had been on the road. I knew that I could do it. And so my career and the professional journey that I've been on would not have been possible without ATO.
Hey, my name is David Busshart. I was ATO at UNC Wilmington and was on staff from 2012 to 2015. Today, I am a senior VP at Bank of America, where I oversee a division of our training organization. When I was on staff, I was a leadership consultant for about a year and then transitioned into the Director of Chapter Services role.
When you think back to your leadership consulting days, skill sets that you strengthened or you developed, learned because you were a consultant?
Yeah, I think right off the bat, a couple things. Communication, number one, right? So getting in front of groups and giving presentations and actually speaking knowledgeably to something was huge in that role, but also the interpersonal skills, right? So the ability to connect with people that are very different chapter to chapter, right? And to be able to tailor your conversation, tailor your pitch, and tailor exactly what we're selling to each of these guys, I think was hugely important going into a professional life outside of ATO.
Thinking back, what were some of the surprises that you came across as a consultant?
Yeah, I think, when you're in your own undergraduate experience, you think everybody's experience is like yours, right? And so I think getting out there and seeing probably 70 chapters or so that I saw in my time was that everybody has a very different experience. They're coming from geographically different places, different cultures, different backgrounds, but also their school's different than mine, right? So big public schools or small private schools were different than my experience, right? So getting to connect with people and understanding where they're coming from is shaping their chapter experience was something that I had to really kind of open my mind up to with each and every visit.
Yeah, any stories that you can think of that stand out while you were a consultant?
Yeah, so Adrian College, so small private school up in Michigan, vastly different than my experience, right? So a lot of these guys were coming from different high schools across Michigan, right? So they were local guys, most of them, and their interests, right? So they were at the time anyway really big into like theater, band, and this was a lot of that school, right? And so for me, wasn't part of my interests growing up, right? And so it wasn't anything against them or anything like that, right? But it was a lot of that was learning what makes you tick, what has that interest done for you, and how are you applying that right now, and how do I connect with you based on the interests that I have and different things that I'm coming in with too.
And that stretched you how?
Yeah, I think the ability to connect with people that we had to kind of create common ground, right? And so a lot of that was the baseline was the fraternity, right? And we're here because we believe in this organization. But then in order to that can only go so far into a deep relationship, though, right? Which is what you need to be successful as a consultant. So then that opened up other opportunities to talk about their interests and then try to find common ground beyond that, right? And I think professionally speaking, I've had to do that a lot, right? Or you meet people, different walks of life that are interested in different things, and at the end of the day, you're finding common ground to establish roots and build relationships in order to continue doing the business that you're doing.
So finding common ground is one area that you would say you've taken into your professional life. Are there other areas that you learned or developed as a leadership consultant that you found helpful in your professional life?
Yeah, 100%. I think having an executive presence is something that's huge in the job that I do, and that's something I learned at ATO. So first of all, inside the organization, working with you, Win, but also the other managers, right? And being able to put together a report of work, having a strategy for where we're going, how we're doing it, measurements that go across that, and being able to speak intelligently to that strategy and have a roadmap for where we're going inside the organization was huge. But then we also took that on the road, right? So we were meeting with deans of students. We were meeting with, in certain cases, in some of my schools, I was meeting with chancellors, vice presidents, right? So we had a really big circle of people at a high level, at an executive level, that we were constantly in front of, right? And so we were not only selling ATO, but we were also selling that strategy, right? And building out partnerships and relationships with these people. And that was huge, right? So coming into a professional environment outside of ATO, into the big bad corporate world, right? It was, okay, I have a leg up on my peers who are, 25, 26 years old that have only worked around people their age, right? And in my experience, I got to start my career very early working with C-suite level people. And so figured out how to tailor my conversations, how to tailor my pitches, how to be concise, what to say, what not to say. All those things were learned pretty early on.
And when you compared yourself, when you first entered the professional world, compared to your peers at the time, you felt like ATO and your time as a leadership consultant gave you a leg up?
I do. Yeah, I think no matter where I've been with a few companies since leaving ATO headquarters, and my experience has been in every organization I've been in, I've been the fastest promoted, been the youngest person who is typically in a leadership role. So where I'm at today, I'm a senior VP at the age of 33, which is pretty young for that title. And I credit all of that to ATO and all the skills that I learned.
My name is Michael Millard. I'm an ATO from Kent State University, and I joined staff in 2016 and was on through 2018. On staff, I was a leadership consultant, and I was tasked with managing through 2 years, 34 different chapters across the eastern half of the United States.
First of all, things that you learned, skill sets that were stretched or developed while you were a leadership consultant? Go through those a little bit.
I would say two things come to mind. The first is that being a teacher, I have to deliver content, curriculum, engage with my learners, make sure they understand what I'm talking about and what I'm teaching to them, and then following through and checking for that understanding and making sure there's not any gaps of knowledge so that they can be successful in the classroom and move on through their education. And so doing that with all of the undergrads that I worked with through 2 years, I mean, it has to be north of 1,500 throughout all the chapters, have to work with chapter officers and then go to these chapters and do visits and do the same thing. Make sure that my learners are learning, make sure they're understanding what I'm saying, that I'm engaging with them and that they're getting a sense of what their goal is, and then they can go be successful in the chapter and on their campus, similar to how my students are in the classroom.
Yeah, so talk about, so when the first day on the job, right, compared to moving through, so now you've got assigned chapters, you're visiting chapters, you're doing exactly just what you said you were doing, engaging undergraduates. What was the learning curve? What were the challenges, and how did you overcome those? What did you discover about yourself going through that process?
The learning curve was steep, right? You know, just directly out of college, I had everything to learn, and I still feel like I do, but the process that our staff takes you through and the experience we have with everyone in the office gave great insights into what it looks like to work as a team, to have people depending on you and you have to follow through with that same thing. I think that our staff delegates really well and that they manage our office and the program so well that I got to see that in an effective level before I went out and had to do that same thing. And so I got to follow a model from the way our office is run to how I'm going to manage, delegate. The big thing, I think, communicate. And so at first it was a lot to take in. And then I just, with anything else, with reps and time and the one-on-one coaching that I feel like that I received is what made me feel confident in that ability to go do the same thing. And at first I was following the model that all of our guys in the office were kind of setting for me, and then once I felt like I had an understanding of that dynamic, then I could make it my own, find my own voice, find my own what works, what doesn't work, and preferences through that. So even though it was steep, you come out on the other side better for it.
Yeah. Outside of the classroom, you're working in the classroom, other life skills or life insights that you got that you lean on today, or you every once in a while you're like, oh, that's because that my experience as a leadership consultant helped me sort of navigate this in life.
Building relationships. So that's the name of the game, right, when you're consulting. And so whether that is the conversations you have and the intentionality you bring to a conversation, whether that's how you just interact with a complete stranger. I felt like I maybe walked in with an ability to do that, but it was quickly sharpened, and that my ability to meet anybody, to work on a team, to effectively communicate with large groups, all of these skills I think I see can carry out into any interaction you'll find with somebody that you just have so many reps with when you're on staff, and that I got to take into the real world, so to say, every day that I interact with others. I'm taking the things that I learned on staff.
Yeah, so you're talking to a graduating senior who is considering a job offer to be a consultant. What do you say to him?
Well, I first ask, what was your undergraduate experience like in your chapter? And do you remember joining, and do you remember saying yes to joining, and what that felt like? And how great was your experience then? Take that and multiply it by 10, and that's the same thing you're going to get. It's the same process. You're accepting an offer to join staff to go work in this great office with this great team, and you're joining a group that's trying to achieve something bigger than yourself, which is what a lot of undergraduates say they joined ATO for. But we get to do it at a national level. They're very isolated in their local chapters, and they can be very effective and very successful, but the stage is set for a much larger audience and a much larger impact. And so however great your answer was to saying yes to ATO in the first place, it's even better on the consultant side, because you join the national chapter and you get all these buddies that you get to keep for the rest of your life, but also you get to do the same thing but at a 10 times magnified scale. And so that was really cool to see the differences in the dynamics, but also the great overlap in saying yes to ATO in the beginning and saying yes to ATO again at the end of my undergraduate experience.
Yeah, well, I can tell you my experience, which is as somebody who studied marine biology as an undergraduate and wasn't sure what to do, but knew they wanted to go into the business world, this is something that's going to give you so much experience, so much credibility, and so much launchability within your career that there's nothing that's going to compare to anything that you can do right out of school.
Take it, absolutely. Like, no questions asked. I still think about it. I still wish I could do it. I think it was the best first job I'll ever have. And yeah, I would say without hesitation, you should do it.